You know that feeling when you are drifting off to sleep, that heavy, honey-thick sensation where your limbs turn to lead and the world starts to blur at the edges. Most people find it peaceful. But for those of us who have felt the weight of something that does not belong in the waking world, that transition is the most dangerous time of all. We were 17, and we thought we were invincible, which is the peculiar brand of stupidity unique to teenagers in small towns. The Blackwood house sat at the end of a gravel cul-de-sac in the hills of northern Georgia. It was a Victorian relic, draped in gray-green kudzu that looked like long, strangling fingers reaching for the roofline. Local lore said the family who lived there in the 50s just stopped coming outside one day. No bodies were found, no signs of a struggle, just an empty house with the dinner table still set. When Leo, Sam, and I climbed through the rotted frame of the back porch window, the air inside did not feel like air. It felt like breathing through a wet wool blanket. It was cold, unnervingly cold for a humid July night, and the smell was not of rot or dust, but of something metallic, like a copper penny resting on your tongue. We had our flashlights, of course. We expected to find graffiti or broken beer bottles, the usual scars left by bored kids, but the house was untouched. The wallpaper was peeling in long, rhythmic strips like dead skin, revealing the gray slats of wood beneath. In the dining room, just like the stories said, the table was set. 3 cracked porcelain plates, 3 sets of tarnished silverware, and a centerpiece of what used to be dried flowers, now just a pile of gray ash. Sam pointed her light toward the ceiling. The plaster was covered in strange, circular stains. They looked like bruises on the skin of the house. We should have left then. Every instinct I had was screaming that we were trespassing on something far older and hungrier than a mere building. But Leo wanted to see the upstairs. He always had to be the bravest person in the room. Scared as we climbed the stairs, the wood did not creak. It groaned. It sounded like a physical exhale, as if the house was settling deeper into the earth under our weight. We reached the master bedroom at the end of the hall. It was a massive, cavernous room with a 4-poster bed that looked like a funeral pyre. The windows were boarded up from the inside, which was the first detail that truly chilled my blood. People board up windows from the outside to keep things out. You board them from the inside when you are desperate to keep something in. Dreadful. We were tired. It sounds ridiculous now, looking back. Why would you ever feel tired in a place like that? But a heavy, unnatural lethargy started to press down on us the moment we entered that room. Leo sat on the edge of the mattress, and before I could tell him to get up, he was already rubbing his eyes, yawning. Sam slumped against the wall, her flashlight flickering as her grip loosened. I told them we needed to go. I tried to pull Leo's shoulder, but my arm felt like it weighed 100 pounds. It was not just exhaustion. It was a predatory sleepiness, a forced descent into a dream state. My knees buckled, and I fell onto the thick, dusty rug at the foot of the bed. I tried to crawl toward the door, but the floor seemed to tilt. The shadows in the corners of the room began to stretch and vibrate, detaching themselves from the walls. Then the paralysis set in. If you have never experienced sleep paralysis, count yourself lucky. It is the purest form of biological terror. You are awake, your eyes are open, you can see the room, you can hear your own frantic, shallow breathing, but your brain has severed the connection to your muscles. You are a prisoner in a meat suit. Scared, I lay there on the rug, my face turned toward the underside of the bed. I could see Leo's boots dangling just a few feet away. He was still, too still. I tried to scream his name, but my throat was a sealed tomb. My heart was a panicked bird fluttering against my ribs, but my fingers would not even twitch. Dreadful. That is when the others appeared. Out of the corners of my eyes, where the shadows were darkest, they drifted forward. They did not walk. They glided with a sickening, jerky motion, like film footage with missing frames. There were 3 of them, the residents. They wore clothes that might have been fine once, but were now gray and translucent, hanging off their skeletal frames like cobwebs. Scared. The tallest one, a man with a jaw that hung unnaturally low, leaned over Leo. He did not touch him with his hands. Instead, he lowered his face until his nose was inches from Leo's ear. I watched, paralyzed with horror, as the spirit began to inhale. Short, sharp gasps. With every breath the spirit took, Leo's face seemed to hollow out. His skin turned the color of parchment. He was not just sleeping. He was being harvested. I heard a soft, rhythmic thumping. I strained my eyes toward the wall. Sam was still slumped there, but a woman in a tattered floral dress was standing over her. The woman was rhythmically slamming her own translucent forehead against the wall behind Sam's head. Thump, thump. With every strike, Sam's eyes rolled further back into her head until only the whites were visible. Scared. Then I felt it. A cold pressure on the small of my back. Dreadful. Something was crawling onto me. I could feel the weight of knees pressing into the rug on either side of my hips. It was slow, methodical. A small, cold hand, the size of a child's, reached around and pressed against my cheek. The skin felt like wet paper. I could hear a faint, distorted sound, like a radio playing between stations. It was a little girl's voice, whispering directly into my ear. She said, "Thank you for coming back. We were so very tired of breathing each other's air. I tried to fight. I poured every ounce of my will into my right index finger. I visualized a spark of fire moving from my brain, down my spine, through my arm. The child's weight pressed harder. I could feel her cold breath on my neck, but there was no wind, only the sensation of freezing needles. She leaned closer, her long dark hair falling over my face like a veil of shadow. Through the strands, I saw her eyes. They were not eyes, they were just deep weeping holes that smelled of wet earth and copper. In a hurry tone, I felt my consciousness starting to slip. I knew that if I closed my eyes, if I let the heaviness win, I would never wake up. I would just become another circular stain on the ceiling, another memory trapped in the wood. With a surge of sheer adrenaline-fueled agony, I forced my hand to twitch, gasping. The connection snapped. It was like a rubber band breaking. Control flooded back into my limbs so suddenly that I let out a jagged, raw scream. The little girl thing vanished the moment I moved. I scrambled to my feet, my legs shaking so violently I nearly fell back down. "Leo, Sam, wake up." Scared, I grabbed Leo and shoved him off the bed. He hit the floor with a heavy thud, gasping for air like a drowning man. I didn't wait for him to recover. I lunged for Sam, shaking her shoulders until her head snapped forward and her eyes cleared. She looked at the wall behind her, where the woman had been, and let out a sob of pure terror. In a hurry tone, we didn't use the stairs, we practically fell down them. We scrambled out that back window, leaving our flashlights behind, the beams still cutting through the thick gray air of the master bedroom. We didn't stop running until we reached the main road, the streetlights feeling like the only holy things left in the world. We don't talk about that night anymore. Leo moved away a month later. Sam won't stay in a room if the door is closed. And me, I've learned to live with it. But I don't sleep in the dark anymore. I have 3 different alarms set, staggered 5 minutes apart, just to make sure I don't drift too deep, because sometimes, when I'm right on the edge of sleep, that heavy honey-thick feeling returns. I'll feel a slight weight at the foot of my bed, not the weight of a person, but the weight of a memory trying to find a home, and in the silence of my apartment, I can hear a faint, static-filled voice whispering. It tells me that the windows in the Blackwood house are still boarded up from the inside. It tells me that once you've been invited to dinner, you never really leave the table. You are just waiting for the next course to arrive. Good night, and try to stay awake just a little longer.